I was at my Walmart the other day and I realized that they have a Jack Black Minecraft action figure. That's not Steve to me. I'm sorry. And who the heck is going to buy this dude? I would prefer Jack Black as Nacho Libre. Remember when he was a chunky, overweight wrestler? I would even prefer him as Spider-Man. Remember that SNL sketch? Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. I'll be honest with you guys. I'll probably go watch Minecraft just because I have kids and I'm kind of curious to see what this film is all about. But I don't want Jack Black in action figure form. Get that dude out of my house, okay? But seriously, let's get intense here because I wanted to talk about a couple of DC projects that I really wanted to see come to fruition from McFarlane. I think the closer that we get to him handing over the reins for the DC license, the chances of any of these happening are getting slimmer and slimmer as time goes by. Now, I could be wrong on some of these. Maybe we did get action figures, but it happened like way back in the day. But I would love to see some of these characters in action figure form from McFarlane, not because I love the source material, but I just love the look or the design of that particular character, even if the film was absolute garbage, and you're going to see some perfect examples of that today. So I guess today is somewhat of just a wish list, not really a speculation video, but I feel like we desperately need these action figures from McFarlane, and I think they would just fit in perfectly with our existing DC Multiverse slash DC Direct slash Collector's Edition line. I think it would just be absolutely a perfect situation. The first one that I would love to see, and again, coming out of left field, I would love to see the original 2016 Suicide Squad action figure wave from McFarlane. I know we got one based in, the James Gunn film, but I would love to see that old school film. I know it was absolute garbage. People hated it, and I'll include myself in it. There are some little moments here and there that I kind of enjoyed. I love the design for every single character, and I could be wrong, but I think when this film came out, Mattel had the license, so they were able to make some action figures. I think like even Mafex picked up the license for this particular franchise or this particular film, and people actually genuinely liked some of those figures. I would love to see Jared Leto as the Joker in action figure form. I know he's not everybody's favorite. He was a little bit cringe and cheesy and over the top, but I think that had more to do with the way that the character was written rather than his actual performance on screen. You also had Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, and I think we have received a couple of figures, but most of those were either based in the James Gunn Suicide Squad film or the live action film of Birds of Prey. But I would love to see something that is based in her original appearance on the Suicide Squad. And as I said previously, even though the source material wasn't great, we got some phenomenal performances, some of the best actors to ever play those roles, and in my personal opinion, moving forward, I will always consider Margot Robbie to be the prototypical version of a live-action Harley Quinn for sure. The same exact thing applies to Will Smith as Deadshot. I absolutely despise Will Smith and the person that he's become, to be brutally honest with you guys, but I did grow up watching Bad Boys. I did grow up watching, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I absolutely loved his performances and the way that he carried himself in his earlier days. And I just absolutely love the design of Deadshot in the original Suicide Squad film. If there's one thing that they got right with this particular film, it was at least the costume designs or the outfits for each individual character. You also had Cara Delevingne as Enchantress, another kind of somewhat obscure DC character in the grand scheme of things, but same thing, I think she did a very good job, and she's actually gone on to have some very memorable performances on screen. So just to reiterate, I think this is one of those films that even though it's critically panned and most people can't sit through the entirety of the film, it's too cringe, it's too over the top, it's too cheesy. Whoever put this film together just doesn't understand how to write dialogue. I know there are some rumors out there that Warner Bros. And a lot of the execs really just tampered too much with the film, and that's essentially why it wasn't great. Personally, I find that difficult to believe. Even if they had edited this film and just chopped it up and cut some very important pieces here and there or some very important scenes, I just don't see how that makes any sense. Even with all of that, I still don't think the film could have been saved. It was just an absolute mess. But I think it's one of those films that will garner a little bit of a cult following as time goes by. Very similarly to like when George Clooney was Batman, Val Kilmer, all of those films I think have started to garner quite a bit of a following as time has gone by. Yes, they're bad, but it's just that people have that nostalgic feeling for those films, and that's why it's very difficult for them to kind of leave them in the past. And I think this is one of those films that will definitely benefit from that in the foreseeable future. Moving on, there's another big live action project that I don't recall if they've ever made action figures for this particular film. I mean, there might have been some here and there, but maybe I can't, recall right off the top of my head. But I would love to see some Watchmen action figures from McFarlane. I know not everybody loves Scott Snyder, and I'll include myself in that. I think he has like a good idea or a good concept when it comes down to putting the films together. I just don't feel like he should be the person writing the dialogue, the plot lines. I don't think he should be the person behind the screen. He uses slow motion too much. It makes me absolutely sick by the time I'm finished watching the film. You just can't enjoy those fight sequences. When I'm forced to see a dude get punched in slow motion, it's like a 1 second clip and he stretches it out to a 20-second clip. It's absolutely ridiculous, but I will say I actually liked this particular adaptation of Watchmen. I know there's a series now that kind of overtook the spot in terms of like the best Watchmen source material, not to mention the original graphic novel, which is an absolute true masterpiece. But there were some great character designs. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I would love to see like a deluxe giant Dr. Manhattan with just his blue ass cheeks hanging out everywhere. I don't want that. Clearly nobody wants a blue schlang in their display, but seriously, I would love to see some of these figures. A Dr. Manhattan with at least a little bit of clothing on, maybe. Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the comedian. I know originally most people, I should say, the newer generations are more familiar with him as Negan from The Walking Dead. But originally, he was the comedian. He will always be the comedian to me. I would love to see a Rorschach action figure, maybe Night Owl, Silk Spectre. I mean, the possibilities are endless here. And honestly, worst case scenario, we get a comic book accurate representation of the Watchmen characters. There was a really big comic book crossover event that happened not too long ago. I want to say like maybe 3-4 years ago. That was the Doomsday Clock comic book series, which essentially brought the Watchmen universe into like legit DC continuity. It's really cool. It's a great storyline. If you guys haven't read it, I definitely suggest you guys do if you guys are really into Watchmen. But overall, I think this is one of those franchises that for some unknown reason always gets overlooked. As I said, I'm trying to remember. I think there might have been some OM way back in the day, like maybe the DC Direct line that tried to take on some of the Watchmen characters. And I know a lot of them are very adult themed. The original comic book series was incredibly dark or had some very dark elements. And then the Scott Snyder film is actually rated R. And then there was the live action series that also had some pretty strong adult theme elements. But that's never shied McFarlane away from actually making action figures based on those franchises. We just saw him take on the Suicide Squad brought to us by James Gunn that was rated R and had some very strong elements. So I personally feel like this is a very strong candidate to like finish off the entire DC license from McFarlane. As I said, it's still kind of like not official because I don't think we've ever received like official confirmation that McFarlane is losing the DC license, but we know for a fact that Mattel is, taking over it, so it just wouldn't make sense for them to coexist here. So here's to hoping that McFarlane was a fan or is a fan of the Watchmen universe. And then I actually did speculate on this particular film earlier in the year. I want to say either December or January. I made a video where I essentially just broke down all of the different rumors, the possibilities that we could have for the year of 2025, and actually one of them kind of came to fruition. We did get the Michelle Pfeiffer and the Danny DeVito action figures for the Batman Returns film. So that kind of came together a little bit. I did say that we could see a Jack Nicholson action figure as a Joker, but whatever. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm usually talking out my ass, but I did say in that film that we could potentially see a small little DC multiverse wave based on the 2011 Green Lantern live action film, which starred Ryan Reynolds and his now wife, Blake Lively. And how amazing would it be to have like two different Ryan Reynolds action figures like happening simultaneously? You have a Deadpool Marvel Legends action figure, which is a 1/12 scale Ryan Reynolds, and then you could have like a 1/10 scale or a 7-inch scale action figure from McFarlane that is also Ryan Reynolds. I mean, if you're a big Ryan Reynolds fan, or if you're Blake Lively, I guess you can have like multiple different versions of him. Anyways, here's the thing. I know this is another one of those films that really got panned critically. Nobody loves this film, but at the end of the day, as I said, a lot of these live action comic book based properties usually garner quite a bit of a following, especially as time goes by. People are not so angry and upset that they spent, $50 to go watch this movie at the theater only to fall asleep or to just absolutely hate it. But as I said previously, I think that there will be some attention to this film, and as time goes by, even if the source material is not great, even if the film is absolute garbage, that doesn't mean that we don't want them in action figure form. So, Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern, you get Blake Lively as in action figure form, you get a live action Sinestro. I think this is a prime candidate for McFarlane to really, jump off the deep end. By the way, you already have like 100 different Green Lantern action figures. It wouldn't even be that difficult to like retool a Green Lantern body mold that you already have, that already exists, and then just port on a Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern head sculpt on him. Now, I know it wouldn't make a lot of sense because for the most part, it appears that McFarlane is really focusing on the James Gunn universe, which, honestly makes perfect sense just because James Gunn has taken over the entire live action DC projects, and moving forward, all of the films are going to go essentially funnel through him, even if he's not directing or writing the films. And so I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that they really want McFarlane to focus in on all of the live action projects. We know that there's a new Superman film coming out, and obviously we're going to get a ton of action figures based on that particular film. So I definitely don't feel like they would want him to like waste resources going back and creating action figures based on a film that absolutely nobody liked. And then lastly, I did want to finish it off with Superman Returns from 2006, which featured Brandon Routh as Superman, Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane, and then Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I don't know if anybody at this point wants or needs a Kevin Spacey in action figures form, aside from maybe potentially setting the figure on fire. But I still feel like this is another one of those films. And unlike some of the previous entries that we've had, I think it's closer to what Watchmen was, where there was a decent amount of support for the film. Watchmen had, I think, overall a 70% rating for the most part from different websites. And I think this film kind of followed on par. Whereas in, the 2016 or 2015 Suicide Squad and the Green Lantern film were absolutely panned. People just absolutely hated those films. I think this one is a little bit different. There definitely is a following, and there are a ton of people, and I mean a ton of people that are huge comic book fans that just love the DC universe, the DC license, that would have loved to see what was coming next from this particular film franchise. There are people that just were not ready for Henry Cavill to take over the mantle of Superman. And it's funny because as soon as we got rid of Henry Cavill, or as soon as he moved on to other projects and stopped being Superman, then there were a ton of people that wished that Henry Cavill would return as Superman. So it's been absolutely crazy over the past, I don't know, it feels like 20 or so years. We've already had so many different actors play the role of Superman. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But there you guys have it. I'm not going to make it too long, too eccentric. These are just some live action films that I would love to see McFarlane's take on. Some of these have already been covered by Mattel, SH, Moffitt, so on and so forth. But I think the end all here has to be McFarlane, and hopefully he at least picks up one of these projects, because honestly, I feel like it would be a disservice to his community, to his fan base. Really go out with a bang. Give us some of these live action projects that we haven't seen in action figure form in over a decade. I know it's definitely a pipe dream because the way that things are moving, the way the tariffs seem to just be adding up, I think the chances of any of this coming to fruition are incredibly slim, but it's still worth talking about. It's still worth speculating on. And as always, these are just my personal thoughts, my personal opinions. Let me know your thoughts down below. What live action DC project would you guys like to see in action figure form from McFarlane? Even if we already have those waves or those lines from other manufacturers, which ones would you like to see him go back and work on? Very curious to see what you guys have to say. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening to me ramble on about action figures. It's what we do on this channel. If you guys enjoy this type of stuff, make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. That always helps the channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.